Here we go, folks. Welcome to Read the Line Celebrity Insider Show. This week, I have the one, the only Brian Kirschner from Twitter, from the Tap In Birdie Show. He writes for BetSperts. He writes for the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Is there anything that you don't do, Brian, when it comes to handicapping golf week in and week out, 53 weeks a year?
No, I do it all. I bet a lot. I talk a lot of golf. I write a lot about golf. I'm on Twitter a lot. I know what's going on. So, yeah, we were just talking. I'm excited for a little bit of a break after the RSM. But, from January to like November, it's nonstop every single week, looking at lines, betting tournaments, being on track of, what's going on day to day. So it's a full-time job, I would say.
I tell you what. You have a full-time approach, and you know I love it. As much as you are entertaining, you are educational, and that's why I wanted to have you on this week to be my celebrity insider for the Cadence Bank Houston Open, or whatever they're calling it this year. We're heading back out to a really cool golf course, Memorial Park, 3rd edition there, Tom Doak, Brooks Koepka. But unlike a lot of these fall birdie fests, right, this one seems to test people a little bit. As you start to look at this golf course, what's the first impression when you get back to this place every year in November that kind of catches your eye?
I definitely think that it is certainly a difficult golf course, and we're not really used to seeing that other than for the 4 weeks of the major year. So I think when a winning score is now going to be around, -10 to -15, I think that brings out a lot more players that can play well, and it differentiates it's easier for me to differentiate players that I think can play well, because I think that certain players tend to play better on difficult courses. And then I think that there's a lot of guys that week in, week out, I don't know if they can get to that -25 winning score, because that takes a lot of putting and it's more random. But when we get on these more difficult courses like Houston Open week, I think that it's a little bit easier to make your player pool a little bit stronger. But the first thing that stands out to me is the length of these par fours. There are some absolute beast par fours on this course, stretching to over 480 yards. These guys are going to be having long irons in, which we don't see a lot on the PGA Tour for just random events. So I definitely think about the difficulty of the course, and I think about the long irons that these guys are going to be hitting into these par fours and in some of the par threes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, you said it there, par threes. I'm going to go there in a second. But you got half of the par fours are over 490. Yeah. And you've got 3 of them over 500. So, yeah, the long iron game is coming out for most of the field. There's also 5 holes that are par threes, and that's unique. You don't see that a lot on the scorecard when it comes to PGA Tour courses. Maybe the courses that you and I play, but, they're always trying to test these guys with some length. So for the course to be 7,400 yards and have 5 par threes is very interesting. That means that those other holes, other than the par threes, are really long.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, because you always come up with some really good content when you're writing and when you're doing the Tap In Birdie Show. When you have 5 par threes, that's almost 30% of the holes they're going to play over 4 days. Do you start to build a little bit of your model around that, or do you start to skew some of your leans towards those guys that are really, really good par 3 players or iron players? How do you treat something like that?
I think that it definitely puts a premium on iron players. Iron players are so important week in and week out on the PGA Tour. But when you're putting an iron in a golfer's hand, and that's, their main, club for that hole, and they're doing it 5 times, I think looking at really, really premium ball strikers, I think that, comes out. And I think that they're at a massive advantage this week. Like, guys that aren't playing this week, but like if you look at the best iron players in the field and you're giving them an iron on 5 holes, and they're good long iron players, I think that's a big plus this week.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And you know what? Hitting in with long irons implies that you're probably going to miss your target every once in a while, right? And these greens, although they're somewhat sizable, they've got some really interesting kind of moves and ebbs and flows with the landscape. And they've got these like chipping swales. There's barely any bunkers on this whole golf course. It's kind of an interesting little setup, and it takes me back to maybe like a Southern Hills type of setup, or maybe even something. I'm going to go crazy for a second. How about Augusta National? Super wide fairways, super challenging around the greens. Not a ton of bunkers, but just strategically placed. I mean, what do you feel like is really going to be that secondary? So we talk about ball striking, we talk about long iron play, the par threes. What's going to be that secondary sort of skill or trait that you're really eyeing as far as who you're going with this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that around the green game is going to be extremely important. I think that, Scotty Scheffler last year, the reason why he was so in contention and played amazing was his excellent around the green game that we saw all year. Chipped in a few times, but like we talked about, the first thing we said, like these par fours are so long. These guys are going to be hitting 5-6 iron into these greens. So they're going to have to be able to get it up and down a few times. And I think that's going to be extremely important this week. And anytime the winning score, like we talked about, is in that, -10 to -15 range, it's really about avoiding bogeys. And that obviously comes from getting the ball up and down, not three putting. So I think that, again, you got to do everything well on these more difficult tests. But I will definitely be looking at short game a ton this week.
Before we get into our picks and everything and we start to break down the field a little bit, I'm curious about something. Because you're not just an avid bettor, but you're also kind of a leader in the betting space, right? You tend to go into other markets, other verticals, and you stir the pot. You get good conversations going, and I love that about you. And that's one of the reasons why I love interacting with you and texting you and talking to you about some of the different things that you're getting into. When you get into the fall, do you build your betting card for golf any differently than you normally would because now football's taking place or because the NBA started or the World Series was happening? Or do you treat everything the same? If it's a golf week, you build your card with the same strategy that you normally would, say it was March?
I do. I really don't take a much different approach in terms of how much I'm investing every week and how much it's to win. Because I don't want to be in a situation where I actually do have someone in contention and they do win and I didn't bet my normal amount on it. Because in my opinion, there's no real difference between a fall swing event and an event that takes place in like March or April. And another thing is that I feel like the winners this swing season have actually been a little bit more obvious. They've been more established players in the space. Like they've been good for a really long time. And I think some of them have been, fairly obvious and, like it was easy to get on them. And I also think another reason why I wouldn't change really my betting strategy is that I think that books maybe spend a little less time making these numbers and putting out odds than they would for a major or a big event in the regular season. So sometimes it's easier to exploit some lines and get some really good value on guys that you think are good course fits. But like Keith, like we do this every single week. So we have a massive advantage. And I feel like that advantage actually comes out a little bit more during the fall swing because there's less people betting it and there's less eyeballs on it.
You bring up a really good point there. There's no doubt that the books are distracted in the fall with football. And they just can't be putting the same amount of time into their golf handicapping and all of their golf analytics that they would be in and around the majors. So if there was ever a prime season to take advantage of things, and this fall has been somewhat predictable, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. You may not like the numbers on certain people like Rory at the CJ, but him winning there is definitely not an outlier. And all the victories that we've seen this fall have been pretty much the status quo, which is interesting, which gets me to the point now then, all right, so we're saying that the Cadence Bank Houston Open, we should be able to get down to a pretty tight list based upon what we both think is going to happen on that golf course and what we've learned about it over the last couple of years. At the top of the board, who are you looking at just right off the bat when the numbers broke back on Monday? Who really jumped out at you?
So it is officially Ryder Cup bubble, guys that don't win on the PGA Tour season. We got Keegan Bradley winning, who hasn't won since 2018. He's on the Ryder Cup bubble. Then we have Russell Henley winning. He hasn't won since 2017. He's on the Ryder Cup bubble. And now we're going to have Aaron Wise win the Houston Open this week. at 18-1. Like you just said, it's not an absolutely unbelievable number. It's not a number that's super exciting on someone that hasn't won since his rookie PGA Tour season. But I think this is finally the week where we see him break through. I think, like we've talked about, I really like Aaron Wise on a more difficult golf course because his ball striking is so good and he's so elite from tee to green, and I don't trust him enough with the flat stick to get to these super low numbers that a lot of weeks that they ask you to get to. He's played at this event the last 2 years, so he has some familiarity with the course. 2 top 15 finishes, I believe, so he's played well here. He's a really great long iron player. He's really accurate off the tee. He has an all right short game. And he's just been playing some unbelievable golf for a really long time, and I think he pays it off this week. Again, not a super sexy number, betting a guy that hasn't won in a while. But like we've seen over the past month, these guys that I think that there's something to being, maybe the 14th or 15th man on the Ryder Cup roster and really needing a win to prove it. And so I think this could be a great opportunity for Aaron Wise to solidify his spot in Rome.
I know one of the reasons that you probably love him is that his one PGA Tour victory at Trinity Forest, that place resembles Memorial Park in a lot of ways. It really rolls with the landscape, not a lot of elevation changes, a lot of chipping swales, a lot of those awkward pitching areas around the greens. So I tell you, I love that pick. I do. But, a lot of people get distracted by the chalk. There's a couple names at the top. And if you had to kind of lean one way or another, I love to do a little bit of group betting. But if I give you 3 names, if I give you Sam Burns, Tony Finau, and Hideki, right? If you had to go with one of those 3, who would you pick?
I think I would go Sam Burns. I think that he does, like Aaron Wise, plays a lot of good golf in Texas. I think he's one of the most elite drivers of the ball on tour. He definitely has enough distance off the tee to compete here, which is really shown to be really vital. So out of those 3, I really do like Sam Burns. Again, a pretty short number. This week that would be kind of tough to get to, but at the rate he wins on the PGA Tour, I think there is some value there.
There definitely is. All right, let's go middle tier, right? You looked at the middle of the book, between 30-1 and let's say 60-1 in that range there, maybe 25-55, somewhere in there. Who pops out for you?
So another premium ball striker that has been playing some really, really unbelievable golf this fall swing is Matthew NeSmith. He's someone that anytime we get to a more difficult golf course, I want to back him because his ball striking numbers are just so amazing, and he's been playing absolutely unbelievable this swing season. 9th at Sanderson, 2nd at Shriners, 9th at Zozo. He's just been playing some really consistent golf, and he's not someone that I think, really excels in super, super easy scoring conditions. But the approach numbers are really good. Gained over 6 at the Sanderson and Shriners, played well at the Zozo. 50-1. I think we're usually used to betting him around 90-1, but I think his recent form and course fit is really spectacular. So I'll be on board at 50-1 this week on Matthew NeSmith.
Any concerns with the fact he hasn't played in 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played in a little bit, but I think that he can carry the form that he was riding for those 3 weeks and just play well. But yeah, I think that, Wise is my pick to win, but I do think NeSmith, placement, top 10, top 20, DraftKings, outright, I think they're all good plays. I really do think he finds himself at the top of the leaderboard come Sunday.
All right, the middle tier, we got Russell Henley out of it last week down there at Mayakoba. There's some more popular names that just keep popping up again and again. Let's have a little fun with a little group betting. Here's 3 popular guys for you. You got Sahith, you've got Joel Damon, and you've got Siwoo. Right? All guys that seem to be floating around the Twitter space. Maybe you could throw another name in there. You don't even have to go with those 3. But they seem to be guys that people are talking about when it comes to this place. And what do you think?
I like Siwoo. I think that he's someone that is known as a very extremely volatile player on tour. He can go out and win the Players' Championship at like 500-1 after missing a couple cuts. But he does win. He does provide some win equity on tour. Winner at the American Express about 2 years ago. And I just really like the fact that he has that upside and he has that ability to just go out and blitz the field. Played really well at the Open Championship, where I don't think a lot of people are expecting that, and has been, just pretty average this swing season. But he did have an 8th place finish at the Shriners. Gained over 7 strokes ball striking. So I like Siwoo out of those 3. Yeah.
I loved what I saw out of him at the President's Cup. I mean, I think that was really, and the broomstick seemed to be a little bit of a difference maker where sometimes he falls short with the putter for sure. Further down the board, maybe plus 7,500 or further. Are there any bombs that can break through in this field? I mean, there's only 4 in the top 20 in the official World Golf Rankings playing. I know Scotty's here. He was runner-up last year.
Yeah.
Closed with a nice round on Sunday, but can one of these guys in the 80, 90, 100 range do some damage this week?
Someone that I've been betting for a while that has just been a cash cow for me because he's so consistent and he's such a good ball striker is Lee Hodges. You could get him at 95-1 to win this tournament, but he's just playing some really consistent golf right now. 23rd at the Zozo, 7th at the CJ Cup, 38th at the Mayakoba. He kind of fell off on Sunday, but he had a really good Saturday round. And he's just extremely consistent, and he has really great approach numbers gains every single week. And again, I like him on a more difficult golf course where you have to be accurate off the tee and you have to be a really good iron player. So like we were talking about before with the par 3s, I think that's a big advantage on him. And when you're looking at guys in this range from like 90 to 1 and above, when you're looking for long shots, there has to be some sort of advantage over the guys he's priced around, given his iron play and how good of a ball striker he is. So I'm not going to stop with Lee Hodges because he's just been making me money every single week. So coming on a more difficult golf course, I think that suits his game pretty well.
Is he your best placement bet of the week? You think he's going to be?
Yeah, I think a top 40 on Lee Hodges is extremely a really good bet. It's been very profitable. And I don't really think he's stopping anytime soon. So I do think a top 40 on Lee Hodges is a really good play. I think it would probably be around plus 105, which I think is more than fair.
Anybody else on that placement board really catch your eye?
Again, I really stick to my guys that I like in the outright market and, also bet them placement because I think at the end of the day, you're just trying to, predict who is going to play well this week. And there's so much variance in golf tournaments over 72 holes that, Aaron Wise might be an unbelievable play and he might shoot minus 13, but someone could just go out and absolutely blitz the field. So I'd like to make some money back. But yeah, I like Aaron. I really like Aaron Wise top 10. I really like Neesmith top 20. And I really like Lee Hodges top 40. So those are probably my 3 placement bets that I'll be most invested in this week.
You go Aaron Wise one and done?
Yes, I would. I don't think like Scotty is a bad option. I think it absolutely should be between Scotty or Wise. I don't particularly love Finau or Burns. I'm sure they'll play well, but they're not someone that's at top of mind for me. But if you're in a one and done league, like I am, I'm doing well in it this year. I'll be rolling out with Aaron Wise this week because I really do think he possesses a really, really good chance to win this golf tournament. But I don't think that we should overlook Scotty because, again, he's really at a really tough number to get to in the outright market. But I've always thought of Scotty as someone that excels in difficult conditions. And we saw that with his major record on his first 2 years on tour. And then obviously with his Masters win and then winning API, which was the hardest non-major of the year. And this was, I remember I bet Scotty here last year and I had a ticket on him, and I really thought he was going to win, and I always thought this was a great spot for him. It's in Texas. It's a really difficult golf course. Scotty, excellent short game, long and straight off the tee, great iron player. So it's going to be hard to beat Scotty this week with the way he played, but, sometimes you just have to take that chance.
I had that ticket last year, too, and that runner-up was a tough one. That was a tough one to take. We really didn't see Kokrak coming. And, He put together that Saturday morning round, and it was pretty impressive because it was tough conditions, and it was a tough tournament last year, and for Scotty to kind of fall apart in the middle of his round on Sunday was really
I remember there were bad bogeys. Like he was missing 3-foot par putts, which we obviously did not see him do that again for quite some time. But again, these guys have to get reps in. You have to get reps in contention, and it helps you. Like even Russell Henley talked about it in his post round interview about he brought up those close calls that he had that he admitted he choked away and how it helped them today in his round yesterday. Just be more calm and cool and collected, and he went out and won the tournament. So I'm happy for Russell. I'm glad he got the W because he deserves it, and he's a really good player. And it was one of those situations where, the recent form and the course history wasn't great, but it was a great course fit and a good number, and sometimes you just have to back someone that way.
Yeah, I mean, what Henley put together last week, it was impressive. It wouldn't surprise me if he was at or near. I mean, he's definitely a solid top 20 this week. There's no doubt about that, if you can get a number on him at that, Yeah. You know what, Brian? I always appreciate your candor. You are humorous as well as you are educational in everything that you do. I love that edge to everything that you bring to all of the golf betting ecosystem. As far as one and dones go, I love Aaron Wise. But when it comes to being my celebrity insider, it's definitely not one and done for me. I got to have you back at some point in the spring, maybe for a major or something like that, and we'll do something fun. Thanks for being on Read the Lines show.